Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, may have just rescued the economy from inflation without throwing millions out of work.
Did you know that Jerome Powell's calculated actions contributed to the solution of the U.S. interest rate dilemma? In an effort to tackle inflation, Jerome Powell's Federal Reserve hikes interest rates 11 times, but they managed to prevent a recession. What crucial choices did Powell make in order to overcome this financial obstacle? In a stunning turn of events, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell might have just pulled off a near-miraculous accomplishment by controlling inflation without completely destabilizing the economy. Imagine this. In order to cool the overheating economy, Powell's Fed boldly raised interest rates an incredible 11 times during the highest inflation rates in 40 years. While critics prepared for a recession, inflation started to decline and employment shot up to heights not seen in over 50 years. Then arrived a unique chance to have an exclusive interview with Powell. The question everyone would be dying to ask: has inflation finally lost its battle? Ever practical, Powell held off on announcing his victory just yet. "I wouldn't go nearly that far," he thought to himself, but over the past year, and especially in the last 6 months, inflation has undoubtedly collapsed. Although there has been progress, the goal is still far from being fulfilled. Curious interviewer Scott Pelley continued, asking out loud why the Fed wasn't cutting interest rates faster despite an 11-month trend of declining inflation and robust economic growth. Powell's answer: a moderate assessment of the strength of the current economic environment, which includes strong growth, a competitive labor market with a low unemployment rate of 3.7%, and cautious optimism tempered by the need for additional proof of a sustained economic retreat. Powell is firm in his belief that the path to re-establishing price stability is still being taken, one cautious step at a time. Despite the delicate dance, from a peak of well over 9%, inflation has dropped dramatically to hover around 3%, which is a big step towards the Federal Reserve's eventual aim of 2%. However, why are we so fixated on this 2% threshold that seems so arbitrary? Enter Scott Pelley, who questions Jerome Powell about the Fed's fixation with numbers. A lesson in monetary policy: a projection of future inflation is always included in interest rates. If the projection turns out to be 2%, you will receive an additional 2% in interest rate reductions. To put it simply, keeping inflation at a little higher level gives the central bank a greater advantage when fighting recessions. A more sophisticated strategy for managing inflation is revealed by Jerome Powell, who highlights his commitment to stabilizing the economy without waiting for the elusive 2% threshold to lower interest rates. Powell directs the careful dance of interest rates in the boardroom of the Federal Reserve, keeping them stable at their 23-year peak. Powell emphasizes the critical need to restore predictable inflation, remembering the previous 2 decades of stability, even though this may disappoint some. He does, however, caution against the delicate balance between acting too soon and accelerating inflation and acting too late and starting a recession. Powell notes the Fed's delay in realizing the need for prompt action to halt the inflationary trend as he reflects on last year's ordeal. Powell hints at possible rate reductions as the committee thinks over its options, and most members are inclined in that direction. However, given the abundance of uncertainty, it's possible that the March meeting won't indicate a change in policy right away, putting interest rates in limbo until May. Can the Fed successfully navigate inflation and stability with caution? If inflation numbers continue to improve, reductions in the federal funds rate may soon come to pass, relieving the pressure on borrowers. The Federal Reserve's seasoned steward, Jerome Powell, emphasizes the significance of consistent positive data over extraordinary performance when making judgments. In fact, Powell looks back on the difficult year of 2021 and describes the surprising economic results of swift rate increases, including job creation that exceeded the expectations of doubters. Inflation spikes were caused by the pandemic's unique dynamics, which included semiconductor shortages and changing consumer behavior. However, these effects subsided as supply chain disruptions decreased. Powell, who turned 71, has served in multiple administrations and is known for his dedication to getting a personal grasp of the country's economic situation. Powell responds to worries about growing costs by interacting with places such as Spelman College and making a distinction between general price levels and those of particular items. Though he warns against anticipating a widespread drop in prices in the absence of unfavorable economic conditions, some prices may soften. However, difficulties continue as the epidemic is changing the dynamics of the commercial real estate market and putting smaller institutions in danger due to their concentrated exposures. Powell is cautiously optimistic despite these uncertainties, thinking that the policies in place can handle future crises. Powell's steady hand leads the Federal Reserve towards economic stability while the country negotiates the post-pandemic landscape. Jerome Powell's unshakable faith in the strength of the banking industry is evident as he moves through the complex field of economic supervision. Although he concedes that bank closures might occur, he assures that a replay of the 2008 financial crisis is unlikely, especially not on the same magnitude as before. Alright guys, across bumpy waves, how is the American economy guided by Powell? It is quite clear that Powell's open admission of regulatory errors like the scandal involving Silicon Valley Bank highlights the continued necessity of alertness and flexibility in financial supervision. Powell notes that the Fed remains committed to improving oversight effectiveness in order to reduce risks in the future, given the dynamic nature of contemporary banking. Powell addresses the national debt, which is a threat to budgetary sustainability in the long run, and warns against it. This goes beyond banking. He stresses the need to put future generations first and calls for responsible budgetary measures to deal with the growing debt load. Powell praises the nation's dynamic economic landscape and its crucial role as a worldwide leader in promoting democracy and security when thinking about the future of American prosperity. He states the Fed's unwavering commitment to neutral decision-making, rooted in honesty and a continuous emphasis on economic well-being, with a smile towards the approaching election. Powell's persistent commitment to the prosperity and stability of the country shines through as he navigates the complexity of economic policy. His unshakable integrity serves as a light of guidance throughout his term. In brief, Jerome Powell has demonstrated mastery of economic strategy in his management of the U.S. interest rate dilemma. Powell accomplished the feat of navigating a ship through a storm as the seas kept changing. Surprisingly, he immediately changed course and raised rates to cool things down once COVID-19 struck, but only after he could no longer keep the economy afloat by cutting rates. Though markets were cautious and critics were outspoken, Powell's steady hand kept the ship on course, utilizing the upward trend of the economy to change course without triggering a collapse. Powell's actions demonstrated that in today's world, a central banker must be prepared to change course quickly. It's not just about figures and forecasts, it's about reading the room, knowing the mood, and moving decisively. Powell's experience leading the Fed during these challenging times changed the role, demonstrating that in the world of high-stakes economic policy, adaptability, toughness, and a hint of daring are now expected traits. Will future economic leaders be more flexible and responsive as a result of Jerome Powell's cunning management of interest rates? Also, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Until next time.